groceries on the conveyor belt, and you're standing in line waiting for your turn with the cashier, when then you look around, you look behind you, and you see that the person directly behind you in line has purple hair and a nose ring. Or maybe you look directly behind you in line, and you see that the person standing directly behind you in line is a guy wearing a turban. Whatever the case may be, the person be standing directly behind you in line looks to you as if that person just got off of a spaceship and arrived from a different planet from the planet you grew up on. Now, if you were to find yourself in that situation, all your items are already on the conveyor belt. You're not going anywhere. You're stuck. You're stuck. So now the question is, what are you going to do? There's two ways you could handle it. You could just look at the floor, say, okay, don't make eye contact. Don't make eye contact. I can do this. Just pay. Okay, quickly, just get out. Just get out. You could do that. Or you could look for a connection point. What might the connection point be? Well, it could be anything. You look at the person's groceries on their conveyor belt, and you notice several apples and some cinnamon. And so you turn to the person and you say, hey, are you making an apple pie? You're going to make an apple pie, aren't you? You know, when I make apple pies, I use granny apples. I notice you happen to be using Red Delicious apples. Tell me, do you prefer that? Do you think I should try Red Delicious apples next time I make an apple pie? Also, I'm having trouble keeping my crust from burning. My crust always burns. Have you managed to avoid that? And if so, how do you keep your apple pie from burning? Now, I don't know if you'll be able to make something like that, but you might be able to find some sort of connection point. Hey, you use Tide laundry detergent? So do I. We have so much in common, right? And hey, if nothing else, if absolutely nothing else, you and that person, you do experience the same weather. So, boy, it's cold outside today, isn't it? See, it doesn't matter what it is. There is always some sort of connection point between you and the stranger, and God commands us to show kindness to the stranger, even when the stranger gets stranger and stranger. Because we have all been the stranger. Your phone rings, and it's a wrong number. Hey, is there a mic there? No, there's no mic here. But I did once know a mic. The mic I knew played tennis. Does your mic play tennis? Do you play tennis? If so, what kind of racket do you use? Maybe you could strike up a conversation with a wrong number. See, God, every stranger that comes across your path was put there on purpose by a sovereign God to give you the opportunity to show kindness to the stranger. In Leviticus 19, God reminds the Israelites that they were once themselves strangers, just as every one of us has been a stranger to someone. Listen to Leviticus 19:33-34. And if a stranger sojourn with thee in your land, ye shall not vex him. But the stranger that dwelleth with you shall be unto you as one born among you, and thou shalt love him as thyself. And then he says, for ye were strangers in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. Basically, what God is saying, you guys were guests, strangers, visitors in Egypt. You remember how the Egyptians treated you? Wasn't any fun, was it? So you be nicer than they were. That's basically what he is saying. Let's compare for a moment the Exodus of Genesis, the Egypt of Genesis. Let's compare the Egypt of Genesis with the Egypt of Exodus. See, back in Genesis, the children of Israel, when they went to Egypt, Joseph and his whole family and all that, they were considered fellow countrymen with the Egyptians. Listen to Genesis 47, verse 6. Pharaoh says to Joseph, "The land of Egypt is before thee. In the best of the land make thy father and thy brethren to dwell." So you see, the Egypt of Genesis welcomed them with open arms, embraced them as their equals. And then you come to Exodus where, there arose a new Pharaoh who knew not Joseph. Suddenly the Pharaoh, the Egypt of Exodus, is a whole different thing. They saw the Israelites as strangers, saw them as a threat, saw them as subhuman. And what God is basically saying here in Leviticus 19 is, be like the Egypt of Genesis. Don't be like the Egypt of Exodus. This call for you and I to see the one who may seem to us to be so different on the outside and treat that person as you would treat one of your own, as you would treat someone who looks exactly like you, who you already know. That call to show kindness to the stranger is a drum that doesn't only get beat back in the Old Testament, it gets beat over and over and over again in the New Testament. The name of my sermon this morning is this: Philoxenos. Philoxenos. What does that mean? Well, folks, Philoxenos, before I define it, is held up in the New Testament as being a fundamental attribute of the Christian. Xenos means strange, different, from outside of your norm or the stranger. Anyone you don't know is a xenos, but someone who looks, acts, eats, or talks very different from you. Well, that person is just even more of a xenos, whereas philo means love. So what does philoxenos means? It means you love strangers, no matter how strange the strangers are. So folks, what do you say? What do you say we put a great big sign on the front lawn of our church that says, "Weirdos welcome"? What do you say? Wouldn't that be great? You see, because God wants us to love everyone and to reach out to everyone with kindness. So let's compare two different Greek words: Philadelphia and Philoxenos. Philadelphia, as you know, means brotherly love. So here's how to think of it. Philadelphia, love of people from the same womb. Philoxenos, love of people from a different womb. Because after all, we do all ultimately come from the same womb, Eve. We all come from Eve's womb. All human beings are in Adam, and every lost person on this earth is your lost family member. You've heard the old expression, "I don't know that guy from Adam." We've all heard that. Can I tell you something? You might not know him from Adam, but you do know him in Adam. Because at the end of the day, we're all the same. I know, yes, spiritually, Jesus Christ has made us different. Yes, saved people have been set apart in Christ. But it doesn't change the fact that we are all still human. All human beings, we have the same feelings. We have the same emotions. Pain feels exactly the same to every human being, and laughter sounds pretty much the same no matter who you are. All the different nations, all the different cultures, all the different races, all the different languages. Human beings, at the end of the day, we have more in common than we have in difference. Would you allow me for just a moment to quote the lyrics from a very popular theme park attraction? It's a world of laughter. It's a world of tears. It's a world of hopes. And it's a world of fears. There's so much that we share that it's time we are aware It's a small world after all. There's just one moon and one golden sun, and a smile means friendship to everyone. Though the mountains divide and the oceans so wide, it's a small world after all. Is that stranger any more lost than you were? Does God love that stranger any less than he loved you? For God so loved some, for God so loved the world. That means every single person that you don't know. That means every single person who is strange to you. God took you in when you were a stranger to God and made you his beloved child. So treating even the strange stranger like one of your own, that is philoxenos. And here is that Greek word, philoxenos, translated into English in the Bible. Why? It's a little word you may have heard of. When you take philoxenos and you look it up in the Greek and the English Bible, I meant to say, what you find is this word, hospitality. The word hospitality is philoxenos, and it is used 6 times in the New Testament, and several other passages also teach philoxenos/hospitality just without using the word. Now, when I say hospitality, there's a word that many of us strongly desire. Our minds instantly put it right in front of it, and that's the word Southern. Because, don't you know, preacher, we're Southerners. We got this hospitality thing covered. Southern hospitality, that's how we roll. Don't you know? We are known for having someone come over for a glass of peach tea while that person sits on my grandmother's homemade rocking chair and we pass around the sweet potato pie. Well, amen to all of that. That is one form of hospitality. But there are 2 forms of hospitality. Now, the first part, or kind of hospitality, is exactly what we think of. Inviting a guest into a home, and while treating them with all the favor due a guest, at the same time, the warm, comfortable spirit as if he were just a member of the family. Mi casa, su casa. My home is your home. That right there is hospitality in its most classic or purest form. Because after all, when you invite someone into your home, you're inviting that person into your personal, sacred, private space, are you not? When you invite someone into home, you're saying, I will trust you, I will love you, I will abide with you. When you invite a guest into your home, you're making that person a member of your family while they are there. Like the Olive Garden. When you're here, you're family. That's exactly the idea right there. And so, the less you know someone, or the more different someone is from you, the more amazing your hospitality becomes when you even invite such a person as that into your home. Okay, but with everything I just said being said, now let's be real. You can only have so many people over for dinner. I mean, if that's the sole extent of hospitality, then you can only do so much. It's not like you can go to Walmart, use the PA system, invite the whole store over to your house for dinner. You can't do that. But here's the thing. The essence, the spirit of philoxenos does not take a living room to accomplish. Love of strangers is something you take with you wherever you go. I submit to you that a word that beautifully encapsulates the essence of philoxenos is this: friendly. Friendly. Seeing everyone in the world as being your friend. I want to take that word, hospitality, and just take away the itty, which is easy because itty is itsy bitsy. And what do you get? You get the word hospital. Well, let me ask you a question. Is a hospital an exclusive club? Does a hospital only help some people that they like? Does a hospital cater only to the well-to-do? No. if there is one entity that you can count on to be there for everybody just alike, it should be a hospital. So imagine if it could be said of Christians. There's one kind of person you can count on for their friendliness. It's the Christian. You can always count on their kindness. You can always count on their love. Have you ever heard this? The church is a hospital for sinners, not a hotel for saints. Well, if a Christian has no excuse for not being friendly at Walmart, that Christian has even less of an excuse for not being friendly at church. When a stranger walks into this church, we want that person to feel at home. We want them to know that this is a place that is open to them, that we love them. Because whenever I hear someone complain about a church, I'm not talking about this church, any church, anytime I ever hear anybody complain about any church out there, I notice it's never about the church's doctrine. Nobody ever complains, oh, that church's doctrine isn't right. I didn't like what that pastor taught. That's almost never, ever, ever what anybody says. I never hear that. The only thing I ever hear people complain about whatever church they're talking about is that church wasn't friendly. That's the only thing people tend to take away with them. So you see, friendliness is very important. Before people can experience the love of God, they need to first experience the love of God's people. You need horizontal blessing to set the stage for vertical blessing. So let's be the friendliest church east of the Mississippi. What do y'all say? Now, in Romans 12, Paul lists spiritual gifts that different Christians have. But Paul's list of spiritual gifts, it ends with verse 8. Starting with verse 9, he talks about all Christians. And in verse 13, Paul commands all Christians to be, quote, given to hospitality. All Christians are to be given to hospitality. Hospitality, friendliness, being warm and welcoming to those you don't know and those who are not like you, it's not a spiritual gift. It's not just some Christians' forte. It's not just some Christians' strong suit. No, it is something that God commands. You know, verse 9 of 1 Peter 4 says, use hospitality without grudging. 1 Timothy 5:10 gives us the qualifications for when the church is going to take care of a widow. And the first one listed there is this, lodged strangers. That it was someone who lodged strangers. When was the last time you did have someone into your home that you didn't necessarily really know the best? When was the last time you struck up a conversation with a, quote, perfect stranger? Do you want to know why someone you don't know is called a perfect stranger? Because when someone you don't know is in need, that's a perfect opportunity to make Christ look really, really good. Now, here in Hebrews, chapter number 13, look at verse 2. Be not forgetful to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares. Notice first it says, be not forgetful. It sure is easy to be forgetful, because you've got 10 bazillion things to do today. And the last thing you've got time for is some random, unplanned encounter with a stranger. But while you are so focused on your life, don't forget to be open to taking that minute to reach out to that complete stranger. Leave room in your heart for the unexpected. Take time to reach out to the unknown, the random person, no matter how busy you are, because you never, ever, ever, ever have any idea what God may have planned for you that you never, quote, in a million years saw coming. And if you don't stop and bless that stranger, then you're going to miss God's blessing. Now, this verse is referring specifically to Abraham and what happened to Abraham, and the fact that what happened to Abraham could happen to you or I today. Genesis chapter 18 tells us Abraham was sitting in the door of his tent in the heat of the day. In other words, he was taking a siesta. That's what Abraham was doing there. When he sees three men walking down the road who he did not know from Adam, and what does Abraham do? He lets out a great big sigh of annoyance. Oh, great visitors. Oh, this is the last thing I had time to do. Oh, I was enjoying my nap. Why did this unexpected bunch of strangers have to show up at my door? I had plans for today. Folks, that's not what Abraham does. Listen to Genesis 18, starting at verse 2 there. And he lifted up his eyes and looked, and he saw three men that stood by him. And when he saw them, he ran to meet them from the front door of his tent. He bowed himself toward the ground and said, My Lord, if now I have found favor in thy sight, pass not away, I pray thee, from thy servant. Let a little water, I pray you, be fetched, and I will wash your feet. Rest yourselves under the tree. I will fetch a morsel of food to comfort your hearts. And Abraham hastened into the tent unto Sarah and said, Make ready quickly 3 measures of fine meal. Knead it. Make cakes upon the hearth. And Abraham ran unto the herd. He fetched a calf, tender and good, gave it unto a young man, and he hastened to dress it. Okay, so verse 2 says he ran. Verse 6 says he hastened. Verse 6 says he made ready quickly. Verse 7 says he ran. And verse 7 says again he hasted. Folks, can you feel the excitement? Can you feel the excitement? Abraham was super enthusiastic about the stranger. So you see, when a visitor shows up at this church, be Abraham. When someone knocks on your door, be kind of like Abraham. When you find yourself with a stranger at the store, be a little bit like Abraham. Now, in Abraham's case, those visitors turned out to be God and 2 angels. And Abraham then received the news in verse 10 that his elderly wife Sarah was going to have a son. Well, there you go. When you reach out spontaneously to a stranger, you got no idea what's going to come your way. You got no idea how God's going to use that to bless you. Now, listen, are there angels among us today? Yes, there are. And is it possible that your encounter with a stranger could turn out to be an encounter with a literal angel? Yes, that is possible. But at the same time, what's also true is simply this: God has divine appointments for you. God has surprise encounters that if you will take that opportunity at an unexpected time to reach out and bless the stranger, you have absolutely no idea what God is going to do for you through that. I have a story to tell you. Over 100 years ago, there was a young man named Robert who was standing on a train platform in New Jersey. The train was visibly in the distance, making its way toward the train station, when somehow Robert tripped and fell onto the train tracks. Robert did all he could to free himself and lift himself back onto the platform, but Robert couldn't. He was stuck. And as the train was approaching, Robert felt 2 hands grab him by the shoulders and pull him up onto that train platform just seconds before the train came through. Robert arose to turn around and to say thank you to this man who had just risked his own life to save the life of a helpless stranger. He turned around to thank this man who had practiced philoxenos. And when he turned around and lifted up his eyes to say thank you, he was amazed at who he was looking at. It was a man named Edwin. And the thing about Edwin is this: Edwin was the most famous actor in the United States at that time. I want you to imagine with me if your life was saved like that, and then you lifted up your eyes and saw that the one who had saved you was the most famous movie star you can think of. That is what it was like for Robert. He was overwhelmed, but he started to say thank you when a crowd formed and Edwin disappeared. Now, Edwin was not only a famous actor, but he actually came from a whole family of famous actors. Edwin had two brothers who were famous actors in their own right, but none as famous as Edwin. He was the most famous out of his whole family. The day came in which Edwin and his brother had a falling out over politics, a terribly sad thing that still happens today. And the contention over politics between Edwin and his brother became so heated, became so bad, that finally they decided to just go their separate ways and have nothing to do with each other. But it was after Edwin's brother became estranged to him, it was after they went their separate ways, that Edwin found out just how fanatical, just how extreme his brother had become. Edwin's last name was Booth. After Edwin's brother, John Wilkes Booth, murdered President Abraham Lincoln, Edwin fell into a deep, deep depression. He quit all acting and secluded himself to his home. Edwin was ashamed of himself. He was ashamed to be the brother of the man who had murdered the president that had saved the Union. He was ashamed to be the brother of the man who had murdered the president who had ended slavery. Time went by while he was in his deep depression, when one day he gets a letter in the mail. A letter that changed his life. A letter from that young man whose life he had saved. And to very seriously paraphrase that letter, it said, "Mr. Edwin Booth, I am the young man whose life you saved that day many years ago. And I know you have fallen into a deep, deep depression over the actions of your brother. I understand this, but there is something I want for you to know. President Abraham Lincoln and his wife, Mary Todd, had 4 children. But of those 4 children, only one survived into adulthood. The other 3 died, either as infants or as small children. And I want you to know, Mr. Edwin Booth, my name is Robert Lincoln. Your brother murdered my father, but that does not change the fact that you saved the life of President Lincoln's only living child. And it's because of you my mother still has a son. And it's because of you my father still has a living heir. You, sir, are a good man." For Edwin, this was a kind of redemption. It lifted him up out of his depression. He returned to acting again. He had a renewed purpose in his life again. He didn't feel terrible about himself anymore. Now, folks, I don't care about history this morning. I'm not here to talk about history. I said all of that to say this. When Edwin Booth reached out to help save a total stranger, he had no idea he wasn't just saving somebody else. He was saving himself. When you reach out to bless somebody else, you're the one that will get the help you need. You're the one that will get the bigger blessing. because you were willing to reach out and show kindness to the stranger. As we stand to our feet for this hymn of invitation, as the Lord is speaking to your heart this morning to say, I want to have hospitality. I want to be open to reaching out and blessing the stranger. You come forward and kneel at this altar and say, God, make me that kind of a Christian.
Beneath the cross of Jesus, I fain would take my stand. The shadow of a mighty rock within a weary land, a hope within the wilderness, a rest upon the way, from the burning of the noontide heat and the burden of the day.